Always trying to innovate.
No doubt.
It's funny.
All right. Well,
Well,
this is
I'm watching you watch that.
This is an interesting one because you said you wanted to get together to talk about composition, and it's something that I know
Yes.
you and I have talked a lot about. It's something I've been thinking about even with kids with my own program, and I was really interested to hear some of the stuff you were bringing up with it. So let's just dive right in. Obviously, you need no introduction. You're Den. You were the guy that I studied composition from. So this is something you brought up, the idea about just getting involved in composition for young musicians. And I'll just tee it up right there. Why don't you give us some introductory thoughts about some of the stuff we were yakking about?
Okay. Okay. So I will, I run the composition program and the jazz program at Rowan University. And I took over the composition when the composition teacher, Harry Oliver, retired. And there's three things that I think about this all the time because it's happening. There's three areas, I guess I maybe categorized it for myself so I could make some kind of sense of it. One is just what I observe, right? Just what I see. The other one is kind of like my opinion as to what's happening. And then another area is a possible plan or maybe not. And this is something that I have to bring up to like the faculty and bounce it off them. Maybe some of them don't even realize this is what's happening, but this is just what I've observed. It's not opinion, it's just fact, what I've seen. And maybe 10 years ago, maybe 1 out of 10 students would apply and not be able to read because they're creating on Cubase or they're creating on GarageBand or they're creating on Logic or any of those programs where you don't really need to write music or read it. You enter information and you can you can put reverb, you could change the sound, you could put, slow it down, change the key, and create loops and really come up with some great stuff. But creatively, what some of these younger students are doing is really, really creative, but they're doing it with a whole different form.
Recording. All right. So where I lost you earlier on, you were talking about the students coming in and using a lot of loop-based stuff.
Yeah.
And that was kind of it. And we lost you right there. So
right. Okay.
Creative stuff with loops.
All right. So what I'm seeing more and more are students that come in that create without writing music down. They do it on Cubase. They do it on Logic, and the requirements on the website would say, hand in 3 pieces that you think best represent your compositional skills, and let's see scores. So the last 4 people submitted those scores, and then when I said, you have to submit a score, a lot of times they would just print out how
like the piano roll, the notation program inside of the sequencer.
Yeah, right. And then what happens is, what that looks like. You have 5 dots, 5 flags, all that kind of thing.
Yep.
So I'm just noticing it more. Now, what they do is creative. But 10 years ago, maybe 1 in 10 would do that. Then at one point, I kind of saw a 50-50 split between students who would write they'd actually write the music down, or they would print it up in Finale or Sibelius or, whatever, Encore, whatever they would use. But lately, I'm seeing more and more of this. So that's just the observation. That's not an opinion. That's just what I see. And the reason I'm thinking about it is the last 4 people that applied didn't write anything down. And so I'm thinking now that's what I've seen. That's not an opinion or whatever. That's just what I see coming in. And as far as what they write, some of it's really pretty good, but they probably can't explain it or recreate it, or maybe they don't have the method, they don't have compositional techniques together, but they're working with this computer program. So that's one thing. The second column, when I look at this, my opinion is, well, this is what's coming. It has nothing to do with what I want or what I like or how things should be. The technology is out there and things are changing. And that's where I start to think, I wonder how others are dealing with this. I wonder how composition is changed. And I know in the music industry area, we have students that are coming in and they're already writing that way, but they've stopped as far as what they can do compositionally. and they like some ideas. Sometimes they come over and I give them lessons. And then, so anyway, that's just what I've seen. My opinion of it is it's what it is. I've seen enough change in my life to know that if I like it or don't like it is irrelevant. And then some of the ideas I've had, and I really haven't had many of them. And this is what I wanted to just actually talk with you more than just have something to say. Should there be a section of a composition where you come in as a composer who will just stay on the computer? Or do you come in as a composer who wants to learn about the different instruments? And because if someone comes in who writes just for computer and halfway through they decide they want to write for instruments, you have to start at the beginning. This is a flute. This is an oboe. This is what they do. This is how they blend. You have to look at scores, Ravel, how they would combine instruments. This is just the nuts and bolts. Forget about styles and the composers. There's the composition has just exploded so much that it's gone sideways and front and back, and it's just exploded. So I'm trying to figure out, or I'm just thinking about it because I see it. It's coming. It's here. It's not like it's going to happen. It's here.
Okay.
And do you see it?
Yeah. I mean, we definitely do. There is, I guess, one of the things to answer your question first is it's really exciting to see young people composing music. Now, whether it was 20 years ago where you're writing blues heads or, hundreds of years ago when you're writing symphonies, whatever it is, you have young people writing music, and that is very exciting. Now, as a teacher, if that's not necessarily I'm not native to that world. I'm not native to composing on Logic. I've learned how to use Logic, but that's not what I was brought up on, So I think that there's a degree of insecurity just from my perspective, because I don't have the formal training, or I guess the formal nativeness that they do with it. We had a student come in and wrote a great electronic music piece, right? Really, really cool stuff. And I was like, all right, well, why don't you show the class how you built this up? And then watching him build a minor seventh chord, it was the craziest thing I ever seen. He's like, all right, here, you're going to start on this note right here. Go to A. Then you go up 12 notes, and then you copy and paste, and then you go up 7, then you go up 5. And he's just and he's building the overtone series. He doesn't realize it, but there's a mathematical formula where you want this sound, it's this, then go this, and then it was great. But they have no idea that he's just building the overtone series,
Yeah.
So I would say that, and I want to get back to something you brought up, because I think it kind of ties in. Two questions with it. Number one, when you're talking about students who want to come in as composers, you're saying that the audition or their portfolio should have 3 pieces, just very general like that. Has it always been that open, or do you think that maybe the school has been a little bit more direct about, an excerpt for flute or a duet that uses this? Is it a function of the audition? And the second part of that question would be, with the technology degrees that are being offered nowadays, like just the music tech world, how they're starting to be, I guess, given degrees, bachelor's in music technology and business, whatever it is that more of the route than it is composition? So what are your thoughts?
Well, good. I mean, those are all good questions, and I have the same questions. That's what I mean. I see the change coming, and I redid the curriculum to include those courses that are in the music industry as electives that they can take, and they could learn how to write that way. But what I see coming in is just like you say, man, I watch a student come up with a voicing or even enter music with some of these free applications, and it just takes so long. I'm thinking, oh my gosh, if you knew the way to do it, but like you say, they build it completely different. Is it right? Is it wrong? It's their way. I mean, is it up to me to teach them my way or bring them more along a way they've already kind of figured out for themselves? I mean, I've seen a student put an attack on a note, and we had to wait 8 seconds before the attack appeared because it had to bounce off the satellite and come back because it's up in the cloud or whatever, wherever this thing is. And I was like, oh my gosh, it's so time consuming compared to how, I was. So my thing, I was brought up with pencil and paper, and I was able to get some finale and, some little bit of Logic. So I have a little bit, you're more, I always viewed like your generation as having a foot in kind of each. And now I see more coming in with less of a foot, but creative. And if they understood how to read, oh my gosh, the techniques that you can tell someone. I've had students come in who can read, who like the computer, and you can go right through that Persichetti book, and it's completely like mind blowing to them. Or talk about modes, but they understand something about reading. But what do you do with these students that really, when they print it out, the printed music is not in their way because they don't think about it until they want to include other instruments, and then you have to start. You have to start with how to, like if you want to include a flute and they're going to read some kind of part, you have to know how to write that out. You have to understand something about a flute. So I just see it headed towards something, and I'm not like I want it one way or the other. I've been in this thing for 30 years, and if you don't like change, you got to find something else to do. So I'm used to things changing, but this is more of, I guess, my colleagues. Are you ready for students to be here who aren't going to be able to read, but they still can create through composition? This is because of the technology and whatnot. But it feels like if I didn't have the last four guys who applied no written music, I'm thinking this is the future. I think for the most part. What do we do with that? Do we say you can't compose? You're already composing. You may be composing more than I am.
Yeah.
So I it's just something that instead of having this conversation, well, it's more of a conversation is what I meant to say with you, helps me more than me telling you something. I'm just telling you something that's in my head that I see changing. How do you get positioned for it?
Well, this is great because, and we can put this video up and even get, some great dialogue started with a lot of our colleagues, because I'm sure a lot of people are in the same boat. But I mean, you have lived and have made your career in this business with other people. These musicians that are coming up, these new computer musicians, if you're writing for the computer, kind of like you said, you don't need people. You need somebody to go over and plus play. And again, I don't know if it's good or bad, right? But it's real and it's coming. So,
well, it's here.
It is here, right? So the lack of dependence on human beings, I mean, do you really need to have a lead sheet or something that looks clean if you don't have a human being playing it? Do you really need that?
Yeah.
And it's anything societal, and I'm sorry to cut you off, but it's anything societal. For me, maybe I don't know, I don't know how to fix the drain in my sink. Well, all right, maybe I wasn't taught that, but if I just go to YouTube, I can watch a video on how to do it, and then bada bing, bam, the computer does it for me. I don't have to go out and get somebody to do it. That's where we're at.
Right. Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. Here's an example of a student who came in. I won't say the person's name, but the student comes in, and I talk with them because what they submitted for an audition was very impressive. It was all on computer, and I get it because if you think about students who want to go to school for composition undergrad, they're not on the same playing field as an instrumentalist, I think. For example, you may start clarinet in elementary school, and you're playing next to someone, and you may be playing, lightly row or whatever, whatever it is, open G, F, go home. It's pretty simple, but you're playing next to someone. And then you go through junior high. If you're still playing, you're playing next to someone. Then you go to high school and you're in band, concert band, orchestra, marching band. Boom. By the time you get out of school, it's possible you've been playing the clarinet for 10 years, maybe more. If you want to start composition, you might be starting to noodle around with it in your junior year in high school, maybe. And you're doing it on computer for the most part, because you very rarely have a situation where you have live people to write for it, right? So the compositional aspect of growing through school, I think, starts later than a lot of the experiences kids have who will play an instrument. That makes sense. So you'll get a student who will say, oh, I have played clarinet, but I'm interested in composition. How long have you been playing clarinet? 11 years. When did you start composition? Oh, senior year in high school. Okay, because when are they going to start that? Who's writing music when they're, in elementary school? Not a lot of Mozart's going on, right? So what happens is you have this composition thing starting later than everybody. Like, composition is not on the level of where an instrument might be. Just haven't had enough time. And what they're learning what they can pull off in like I said, like Cubase or Logic or something like that, or even Finale or Sibelius or Encore or Note Flight or whatever. I mean, I've seen all these programs, and that's where they're creating. So they're, for the most part, they're not going through like, let's study Bach and let's study Brahms and let's get into Mozart, let's get into Beethoven, let's follow that whole lineage, Debussy, Stravinsky, you know, that whole way that we would study it. That's there if you can get somebody to go through it that way. But what's happening is everything's on the table: computer stuff, grooves, any kind of music you can find, world music, people working with sonorities, and not necessarily even like thematic material. So everything is out there, and a whole different way due to technology of creating music is out there. And for I've had students come in with, I said, all right, this is the situation. What are you interested in? I want to write. I'll stay with computer. Then they come in and then they see the orchestra concert. They see somebody else writing for it. They say, I want to write for orchestra. And I'm there, woof. Now we agreed that you're not going to do that. So if you want to make the shift halfway through, what you're making the shift to is you're going to start at the very beginning. You don't write for an orchestra if you haven't written for all the instruments or understand it or crack open an orchestration book. You know, that the orchestration is a huge issue. And it's just interesting to see, coming from that world of just technology, when you make the flip, there's no way that I found that they could do that without understanding the keys. You can't dump something like that on the orchestra conductor and have them mop up everything that might not be right. So they go out, they see a Marvel, you know, they see a Marvel movie, they love it, they love the soundtrack, they want to do that. Well, that's a pretty big jump from, I'm going to create a loop. But I've had students who've changed their mind, and then they realize how much they don't know, and it can like wear them down. So you have to write an etude, even if a 10-bar etude for each instrument, so you understand something about it. And you know, and then talk about counterpoint and form an analysis. That's like a whole other thing that they don't like even aware of, which you don't have to be, like you said, if you do something for if you write something just for computer. So in my head, I see some kind of like under the composition program, two worlds that you can like be in one or the other. That way, you know what you're after. And, you know, at least that's what I see. I could be wrong. There could be another design, but I see it. It's here. And this is something I'm going to bring up. And I would love to have some discussion about it with some people. I know some people will say, if you can't write music, then they shouldn't be in music school. Yeah, but you know what? There's a lot of people making music that can't read it because of the technology. And it's good stuff. It's not like it's bad. I had a student that said, show me what you do. And he was just banging on the keys, almost, you know, all within maybe 2 octaves. Then he picks the sound, Berlin Philharmonic string section. Then picks like reverb. You know how you have reverb sampled from La Scala in Milan or Carnegie Hall in New York. They'll pick a reverb and then they'll slow it down and they'll lower the tempo. And it sounds like something, you know, I said, do you listen to Varese? And, you know, who's she? And I'm thinking, oh, you know, so, but because of the technology, they're able to play like this. And then if you print it out, it may be unplayable. It may have a violin sound off the range of the violin, but if they're not going to use real people, this is the thing. So whether it should or shouldn't be allowed, it's here. It's here, along with the people that come in that are already, you know, writing on, you know, they've written for different people. And the other thing is, someone in high school doesn't have the opportunity to have stuff played. Very rarely do I hear an example when someone does send in a score and a piece of music. I would say 20% of the time, the example would be real people playing it, real musicians playing the part. The other 80% of the time, it's, you know, computer realized. It's
why do you think? Why do you think that is?
Oh, there's not available. If somebody writes 16th notes and they pick a clarinet sound, they don't have anybody in their class that can play it. So the computer does it. Like, that's what I mean. Like, composers start later, and if you hear something that you like, if you hear a clarinet go, and then you write that out. You don't have anyone in your class that can play it, so you do it on computer, and you figure, well, this is what I have. Then you look at it, you realize, man, this is off the horn. It's in a bad key. They don't understand the fingerings they have to do, if it's going to be real people. But I think it's a lot of, I don't want to say it's a condition, it's where it is. And if there isn't some thought, or there needs to be some thought, or I'm not saying it right, I've been thinking about how to approach this, and that's what this is. It's a definite, part of me would like to accept these people who can't read, but knowing that they're not going to write for real people. They stay in the computer world so they can get results. Because if we decide to write for flute, you have to stop composing completely and understand the flute. You have to look at a clarinet, understand that you'll get a trombone and they'll write right in that dead spot in the bottom of, the bottom where you don't have any notes unless you have a trigger. I mean, none of that stuff anyone's going to know if you just write on computers. So it's all valid. It's just all coming in like the high tide. And I'm thinking, you're not stopping it because that tide's coming in. And what do we do with students who can create really well, but read very, very little, or improvise on the piano, and they have a sense of melody and they have some kind of sense of harmony, but they don't read that well, and they can create things on the computer? Is there a spot for that? That's my question, I guess. Anyway.
Well, from the point of study, sure, but you and I both, we compose, but that's just one part of our musicianship in our professional lives. We perform, we teach, we do all this other stuff. So I think the concern is also coming from a student who plans to do this for the rest of their life and make a career out of it, feeling like if I go to a school to study, electronic music, I'm going to do that. That's not necessarily the case. And the scary part for me as a teacher, when I hear students say, oh, I just want to do this, and not realizing that, composition is just one piece of all of the hats that we wear to kind of make a career out of it. So the novelty in and of itself, I mean, the whole scene is flooded with, I don't want to say amateur, but it's just so accessible for any amateur to promote anything that once you can study it, but what are you going to do with it? That's the question for me.
Study what? What do you mean? You could study what?
Like you could study being a computer musician.
Oh, got it. Right.
Right. Like whether it's a part of a subheading of composition or what, but, not only with, this new style of composition is one thing, but then, what do we do with this? How does this set you up for, your 20s and your 30s, or does it? That's the question.
Well, some students come in to our technology program. Our technology program they're knocking it out of the park. That's the area of our business is hot right now. I remember when jazz was hot, and then when everybody had computers and taking care of IT, that was hot. I've seen eras come and go, right? So right now, music technology is happening, but there are students that come in from high school that are already creating their stuff on, like we're talking about, on computer. It's up on Spotify, it's up wherever it is, and they're already writing for video games, which is the new area that composers can go, because video game writing is different. You need little themes. You're not going to develop a 50-minute theme in a video game. You make a choice. You need a little clip for each choice, and then that choice, and so you're making all these. And they're doing that, and so students have come in at the freshman level, and they already have some of their music on video games. So there is a spot for it, irregardless of taking any composition lessons. I mean, they hear what it is and they kind of mimic it like you would, and that's fine too. And what I've done, I work with Matt Gendrew, who runs that program. I said, if any of your guys want composition lessons, send them over and I'll teach them whatever I can, as long as they can read music, because you can always give somebody a device. You can always teach them how to write intervallically, or how to write one scale over another one, or get into the bright dark thing with the modes. There's a ton of techniques once you have even a slight talent for reading. And one of the fellas came over and says, I want to write like a Frank Sinatra chart. And I was like, who doesn't? I said, okay, well, you have to learn how to write voicings for a song. So I said, if you pick the song, you need to write a lead sheet so you can see what the chords are, and I can show you how to make these jazz-like voicings. Well, what's a lead sheet? I said, well, a lead sheet, you pull up like a real book or something, and you say, you need a melody and the chord changes. Well, and then he plays me his thing. He plays, well, this is what it is. And I said, yeah, but you have to tell me, is that an F major 7? Or is it a D minor 7? What kind of chord is that? He goes, well, maybe you could show me. And I'm like, no, if we're going to start playing with this, we have to know what this is. So then we can, if I know this is D minor, I could show you 20 ways to play with it. But is it D minor? Well, this is my sound. So there's like a disconnect. And when you step from one world to the next, going from writing and going from like actually writing for different instruments to, and then getting into like something like Logic, it'd take you a week because you're learning how to work a mega tape recorder, but learning all the different instruments and the styles and what kind of things you can do. And then you get into things like percussion. And, if you want to write for people, I give them the Adler book. I said, here's the welcome. This is what you think is so easy to like hop over. And a lot of it is driven, or this is what they think it's, I'm going to hop into this. Tell me what I need to do to write for flute. Here's a book. Pick the instrument, read about it, look at the different instruments. How come they'll print something out and say, look, you don't want to mess with you don't want to put a trumpet in like E or B, like stay away from sharp keys. Third valve combination can get pitchy. What? So you got to bring in a trumpet player and explain why that's pitchy and why you stay with all that kind of stuff. So as soon as I want to write for an instrument, it stops and it slowly creeps through like each instrument so they can learn what it's about. Otherwise, the conductor is left trying to blend something that could possibly be impossible to blend because they didn't know. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah. And, something that just, popping back and forth, and just a heads up, I got 4 minutes left on this one. So I might need to stop and restart if we're still going. Just a quick heads up.
Your call. Yeah.
But it almost sounds like you're looking for a sampler of sorts. And again, because we're both over at Rowan, I'm thinking about the other people who are over there. And if there were like a sampler where you get to study classical composition with Bruce, you get to study jazz composition and arranging with you get to study electronic music composition with somebody like Kevin Stahl and the whole team that you have over there.
Yeah.
And then you have another person who kind of gives you the basics on computer stuff, right? So like they're like a finale. Here's, how to do all the meta keys and finale. It's very quantifiable, very basic. Here's how you cut tracks in Logic, the basic stuff. Yeah. But then you have the true natives in their world teach you about the actual music part of it. The sampling part of it, I think, is really, if you're looking to study composition, man, you need a little bit of everything anymore.
Yeah, well, that's what I mean. It's exploding. It's bang. It's going out like this, like a lateral explosion. It's all over the place. And then we're not even talking about styles of music yet,
right?
Or world music, or who the composers today, and like who's doing what. But I have nothing other than my thoughts up here, and welcome any conversation or any kind of back and forth, because it's here and it's all good. There's nothing bad about it. It's just that this is changing, and it's ridiculous to not think of it as changing, because you're going to get caught in a big mess.
Well, I think it's also difficult to accept it too, because to welcome change is a really difficult thing. You could easily just say, these kids don't know how to read music. I don't want anything to do with them. And that's not music. That's not music.
That's easy.
It's very easy to do. Right. I agree. So it's challenging, and it's a good conversation to have. And another point that you brought up, about kids not writing, and I know, look, I do write, and I've created an opportunity for my kids to develop if they want to, but it really comes from, some great advice that you gave me. And if anybody is watching this or checks it, man, just write 8 bars. You do not have to write a full piece. If everybody writes something palatable, like 8 bars, and it's just backgrounds, give me 8 bars of backgrounds on the first 8 bars of Autumn Leaves, and you bring it in and you play it. The experience of dealing with people is so much more important than anything else, like you were talking about right now. Just get up in front of the band, count a tune off, hear yourself played. So, yeah, it's a thought.
Do we have to break?
Yeah, let me, because if you got something on this one, then I'll let you go.
Oh, you're going to have to shut me down on this one.
All right, then let me pause it. I'll save it, and then I'll give you a buzz back. All right, we're recording. All right, so where we left off, I was saying that the whole idea that you brought up of just doing something for 8 bars, it's so valuable because everybody can palette 8 bars, and you can get a lot of kids up in front of the band to do it. Like you said, you got to hand out music, you got to do the whole rigmarole. It takes a long time, but one sheet of paper, bang. So,
well,
you were going to say something.
No, that's great, because what you get with that, and this is another thing, you'll love this. What you get with that is so much more than you think. You learn how to write the notes. Boom. You learn something about the instrument you're writing for. Boom. You learn how to write out parts. You learn how to line up parts. You're learning about transposition if you're giving it out to somebody. You're learning about what it's like to have people read it, what makes it easy to read, what makes it hard to read, how you divide the bar line. I mean, just a simple thing like an 8 bar, about 15 things without even thinking about that you have to pull off just to make it happen, which is why when I see a score, I can at least get a sense of someone, how they can manipulate that, or are they aware of that. But if I hear a recording, that means they jump through all those hoops. Whether the recording is good or bad, they try to jump through all these extra hoops. Keeping it on computer, you never visit that world. It's not good or bad. It's just their composition is exploding. It's just exploding. That's it. 2 worlds. And in those 2 worlds, it's huge. There's history, there's styles, there are composers that are special in certain areas, there are performers, and it's for a school, like for example, we can't go over 120 credits. So with more things added to composition, you can't make the program bigger. You're stuck with a certain amount of credits. And let's say they give you 120 credits and the state asks for some and the university asks for some, maybe you're left with not quite half of that to play with. Then that's all you get to manipulate. Then, you're really looking at, wow, this is, so I have a big elective bank that the students can pick from. And a lot of it is that where they can go in and work with they can work with computers. But the other way, coming in that way, it's back when I started to feel this. I was emailing John Harbison. Look, he's one of the modern composers. He's great, and he's written for everybody. He's won all these awards. He's been a great composer. And I asked him. I said, all through email, talked to him once, but we just emailed for about 6 months. I said, what do you do? I mean, how do you teach? He goes, I teach my kids just to write tunes. I'm like, tunes, like chords, and like it's like a tune. He goes, yeah. And he says, the steps that it takes, understanding the harmony, writing the melody, how to develop a melody, how to develop a melodic shape, what key, how to set it up, how to write out the parts, how to put the title on, how to put the feel on. So I asked him, so you mean you like write tunes like a real book write tunes, not just like a melody. You're talking about like structure. He goes, yeah, once you got the structure, then it's all development. Like Ernie Watts said, once you know the scale that fits the chord, it's multiple choice. You want to play fast, slow, lyrical, pointillistic. You want to double time. You want to create a pad. You do what you want once you know the notes to fit. He says, when you learn how to write out a lead sheet of a tune and build the tune, you're dealing with like 80% of the things you're going to deal with. You can even write a melody that develops, so you can work on development. And he'll have these tiny goals built into a tune. He goes, all they do is they write tunes for his assignment. That's all I teach. And then they can expand from there. But everything, if you think about it, that's like what you're talking about with the 8 bars. It's more than 8 bars. You're going to write for bassoon. You have to study the bassoon even if you're going to write 8 bars. But you're learning the stuff you learn. So that's why it's such a slow creep for someone coming in from computer, and that's all they've done. But there are people that are knocking it out of the park on computer. I've heard some great things. Half the film scores you hear on TV are computer. Listen to a Law and Order episode. It's just like a half hour of loops and bundles, like that drone in the background, and it's effective because it works. So yeah, I mean, I invite any kind of conversation. I'm sure I'm preaching to the choir. I'm offering nothing in terms of advice. I have nothing to offer other than I would love to learn and hear what other people think and how they view this thing, if they're even dealing with it at all. But from being in charge of the composition world, I'm seeing it really change. It's really, really changing. Jazz is a different thing. Performing is a different thing, but composition, it's just leaping over here. It's jumping over here. It's like trying to pick up mercury. You know, you grab it, it squirts over here, then it goes over here, then it goes up. It's going all over the place. And there's great creations from different areas. I almost wouldn't even call it writing, because a lot of times it isn't. It's like sound creation, you know.
Mm-hmm. I remember talking to my kids too in the music tech world, talking about how, you know, wind players spend so much time on long tones to develop their tone quality, right? But now a long tone for a computer musician is messing with sound waves and EQ and filters to try to develop their own tones that way. You know, it's a similar process. So I feel like in this new world, we're fortunate enough, and you much more than me, there are so many quantifiable things about composing that we have in our belt. And this new wave with the computer just brings on a different set of quantifiable tasks that I think, and any teacher, the more quantification we have, the better we feel about teaching it, because 1 + 1 = 2. And that's not going out of style. We feel good about teaching that concept. But the concept of what makes this good, it's too open-ended for people. And the open-endedness, if not in the right hands, can be a real turnoff for people. So we're living in this, you know, we don't know what makes this great or what makes it quantifiable. And I feel like education in general relies so heavily on what is quantifiable. Sorry to keep using that word, but I think it's it.
It's good.
Teachers feel a lot better about teaching things that they know, or that they just feel very strongly about. I think if we felt stronger about what makes this music pop, and, you know, the consistencies, just like, oh, you want to write a jazz tune? Let's write a blues. You know what a blues is. You know what the chord structure is. We've academic
cracked the code.
Yeah, like kind of like crack the code with it. You know, you want to write a canon. Well, there's a formula for that. This electronic music thing and this new wave of composing, it's just too new yet. I don't think there's vernacular yet that makes us feel good about it yet. Not to say that it's not there, but I feel like it's kind of in those hands right now. In the wrong hands, it could be this isn't music. You know, where's the pencil markings? Where's you measuring with the ruler so that you get 4 even measures on each page? That's music. You know, that's it's a thing of the past.
Yeah, that's not good either. Well, this is good. This helps me already. I feel better just talking about it with somebody who like, just hearing you talk gives me hope for discussion with this thing, because it's new and it's coming. And I'm not sure, if you're not dealing with composition students, you might not even know what's happening. But you're one of the schools where you actually have your students write something. You know, that doesn't happen in a lot of places. So, but they can always create something with this you know, software. And you know, I would be the first one to say, oh, this is nothing, except I've heard some great things happen. I wish I came up with it.
Yeah.
You know, so I did take some finale.
I was just going to say, you got to have the right person though. You know, these kids, these kids that are coming to Rowan, if you were teaching basket weaving, they would be eating it out of your hands because it's you and you're very supportive to your students. You know, any student, any human being that is met with support and intrigue and, you know, genuine interest, man, just in the way of the world where it's at nowadays, you know, if you're receiving that from somebody, that's it. So, you know, you know,
well, there's a real opportunity here, you know, and I smell it. It's right around the corner. I'm trying to see it. You know, there's a real opportunity to really like reach out, and like you said, you know, to connect and maybe what you say, like you said a couple things that made a lot of sense, you know, like you know, the 8-bar thing, something that's a small chunk that's guided towards something. Like even if they had a particular pentatonic and write out an 8-bar melody within an octave, like give them like limit, just something to create within, so it's just not all over the place.
What we'll
come up with.
I was going to say, what we do is I use the Belson book a lot, that modern rhythmic reading. And like even just like the first 2 pages, because it's all eighth notes and quarter notes. So you take, because when you're composing, too much freedom is almost a bad thing for a young composer.
Oh,
right? You got to kind of hone it in a little bit. So I'm like, all right, and it doesn't matter. Here, take 8 bars of rhythm. They don't have to be the same 8 bars. You can just pick and choose whatever you want, but take just 8 measures of rhythm. And I don't know, let's pick a new scale. Let's pick a harmonic minor. We're not going to do all 12. We'll just pick a harmonic. Which one? F. All right, cool. So here's the notes. Here, you got 8 bars. Here's the rhythm. Here's your palette of colors. Write a melody. Cool. They send it over. I go to finale. Well, here's what you can do. You can here, you know how to transpose. Bang, copy and paste, bang, bang. It goes all the way down. PDF it so it's on everybody's phone. And then bang. All right, everybody, go to my Google Classroom, pull up your part, and here we go. We got it up on the screen. But it's just 8 bars. And it's a quick harmony. Here's how that scale sounds. All right, cool. Tomorrow we're doing D Phrygian. What the? Here's the notes. 8 more bars. It could even be the 2 bars and then just keep sequencing, whatever it is. All right, but it's your turn today. Your 8 bars today. You're going to come up and count it off. It's the same deal. It's a lot of work, but it gets kids composing. And some of them might be like, hey, listen, I don't want to say this in front of my friends, but that was actually kind of cool. Like, all right, cool.
Yeah. Well,
and then it goes from there. But you got to have the right cat to provide that, The
sales. Well, you mentioned something about you need that. I told you that Stravinsky story where there's a book called Poetics of Music.
Oh, yeah.
Interviews with Stravinsky. Yeah, and what's the hardest part about writing? Someone asked him. He said, starting, because I can go anywhere. And he noodles around until he finds something, and then he puts a fence around it, and he creates within it. So all those pieces were a little bit different. And I thought, man, that's worth its weight in gold. Because you have to, no matter where you're at, you have to make it bite-sized. You have to make it so it's something you can grab. But yeah, there's a lot in there, and that's a good point. Maybe
like even that too, Dan, right there. I mean, gosh, I hate to take it this way, but it's a perfect world, right? Like it's a social media world, so every picture is perfect. The way I look is perfect. Even go to these charts that people write. You're so concerned about it being perfect, and I want this chart. I want to keep working on these 8. Just work and work. Just get something out. Do it. Nothing's perfect, and be comfortable with the fact that look, you're probably going to screw this up. That's okay. Here, you just learn something, and it's okay. But again, that environment, I think, is a big part to improvisation, to composition, whatever it is. Here, you're going to suck at this the first few times you do it, but come on in. You're welcome.
Well, that's part of it. It's not that you suck at it. Just look forward to sucking at it, or look forward to the mistakes, because it's part of the process, as opposed to, that's why that judgment thing, you can take that right off the plate, because that'll, there's 25 ways without even thinking that you could sabotage someone's self-esteem, but they'll never write again, or you'll turn them into a thing, because you'll turn them into a mess, because you can't write without like banging into a few trees. You have to. And you have to. I mean, no one writes a chart where everything's perfect. Then you write another one that has some risks in it, and everything's perfect. You get bang into a few trees until you realize where the trees are, and then you stop banging your head into them.
Yeah, right. No,
this is good.
I think you've got something with this, man. This idea of a little bit of everything, but now, like in the composition world, you just have more tools to add to the shed. The computer is becoming much more of an instrument for all of us than maybe we were in my age, and you were obviously in your age. The computer is just it's a necessary tool to make it in some sort of world nowadays.
Well, the computer is it allows you complete freedom in certain areas, and that's great. And I mean, I've done things with just a computer, and it's fun. But as someone who's in charge of a program, the idea of being able to read music, that's a thing, because that keeps you in or out of another world.
Right. The dependency on the computer is the scary part. If you're solely dependent on it, then that could be a thing.
This is good. I'm glad we're talking, because this is relieving the pressure that I've been carrying myself. Well, you're saying a lot of things that makes it. Well, you see it too, and I'm sure other people have. I would love to see what people say about this. I'm just looking for. I'm trolling for any kind of information. I have nothing I'm leading nothing other than, let's talk about this, and maybe it's because we don't have a forum for composers to chat about this kind of stuff. It's let's look at this, because it's I don't want to be that close.
I think it means a lot, especially coming from you, because of how highly you're regarded. I mean, if you're the one kind of bringing this up and talking about it, not to blow smoke up your butt, but seriously, I mean, you're a figurehead, you're the composition department chair of a major university in our state. So if you're the one bringing this up, I think your points will generate a lot of back and forth. I think it's great.
Yeah, well, I appreciate talking with you because you're right on it. It's the you see it, you come, you have other ideas that are haven't thought about that actually are are good, and it brings me back to the other, that idea of the 8-bar thing. You can lead that anywhere.
Yep.
You can lead that anywhere, and look up John Harbison. He's a heavy, and when he told me, he said, I teach him the right tunes. Teach him the right tunes. There's like a different goal in each tune. Maybe static harmony, maybe a lot of harmony, maybe a shape type melody, maybe just one little goal in each tune, and that's what they're playing with. And he says you could learn almost everything you need to learn by writing a tune. Just like what you said, think of the things that you're going to do with 8 bars. Think of what you have to do. If you're going to write something for 8 bars, everybody's going to play it. You have to write it in a range that's transposable for everybody. I mean, all that stuff there's so much in it. There's so much in it. But they all want to come in. They all want to write, like I said, this one student wanted to write a 5-movement opera. First thing ever wrote. Never wrote for anybody. 5-movement opera. 5-movement. 5-movement. I don't have 5 things moving under my hood in my van. I was like, holy smokes, 5-movement opera. What are you talking? Did you ever write for a flute? He goes, no. I said, well, let's back up. Well, because, they don't know, because, big is grand and big is good. And a movie that's really good has all that effect. I want to do that. I get it. John Williams, you would see some of those Spielberg movies and you want to write. You look at the Korngold movies where he's, pirate ships, and I want to write like that. Of course you do. Well, okay, this is how you start. You hold a pencil like this.
Yeah.
Anyway, this is good, man. This is good. I'm glad you wanted to do this, and I this is more of a conversation than I have anything to offer.
Well, let's make this the part 1, and maybe we get a little bit of feedback from people, and maybe we keep yakking about it. I think it's a really great.
Yeah, absolutely. I like that. And maybe some other people have things they could say and hop on, because it's all about like encompassing it all and moving forward, as opposed to, I don't like this, I don't like that. That it can't be, that's not I brought this up and I had that conversation. So that sort of erupts on its own. I don't prompt it, but it's, I mentioned to someone, I won't say who, a lot of these guys can't read. I don't want them around then. Well, okay. They're still creating some nice things, and it's going to be, they're going to be doing something with it. They might already be working for some video game or something like that, but it's definitely coming. But the fact that the last 4 people that applied had the same situation made me think, I'm going to see more of this. So I would need to have I just need to talk. I need to do more of this. This is good. This is good. Anyway. All right. You're going to make the rest of the time down the shore much nicer.
All right, great. Well, that sounds good. Again, the background's tremendous in the van too. Love it.
Yeah. Oh, well, I'm sorry. Look, I was trying to get some sailboats in there, but I didn't know first time my phone ever overheated.
You're burning, man. That's why you're burning.
It's burning. All right, man.
Thank you so much. See you, buddy.
Take care.